Imagine what it would be like to gain mastery of life and death, and how just this simple act of dropping your phone gives you access to a converter that could increase longevity, but at a price. The story unfolds with Ning Hao, sitting in a hospital as he begins to think about his mother's condition since it is getting worse. Apparently, he is 3 months behind on the medical expenses, and if he is expelled, they would not give him painkillers anymore. As Hao continues to think of what to do about his predicament, some nurses suddenly rushes a patient in on a stretcher, and as they pass Hao, his phone suddenly falls on the patient's body, but he immediately picks it up and begins to clean it as the phone is covered in blood. He then tells himself that he almost lost his most valuable item, but as he tries to press his phone, he suddenly sees that his phone begins to load. Then he suddenly sees a lady telling him that he is welcomed, as he is the world's sole customer of the yin-yang converter, and she tells him that they would throw in a tutorial presentation. Hao begins to wonder if his phone has a virus in it. Then he begins to ask if the yin-yang converter actually converts lifespan, and the lady immediately tells him that it is true. Then she begins to tell him the list of services they render. Hao asks the lady if the converter is real, and she affirms it as she tells him that he can even convert for yang longevity. But he becomes surprised at what the lady tells him, and she also tells him that since he is human, she would look at his yin virtue and yang longevity. As Hao gets to his mother's ward, the lady tells him that he has 50 years of yang longevity, and he has a lot of wickedness in him which affects his yin virtue. The lady also tells him that he can convert 10 years of yang longevity into 1 year of life, and Hao begins to think as the conversion is seeming strange to him. Then the lady tells him that he needs to choose as soon as possible, because his mother's health does not look promising. Hao begins to think as he kneels in front of his mom, and he asks himself if he should do it or he should have faith, but his mother immediately wakes up and asks him why there is darkness everywhere. That she also tells him that she is feeling cold and pained. The lady immediately tells Hao that he has to choose as his mother does not have much time. Then Hao tells himself that he has to try to see if it is true, and suddenly the lady congratulates him as he has yielded his life to save his mother with a filial piety that moves the heaven, and she also tells him that he is rewarded with 10,000 yin virtue as he has 40 years of yang longevity. The lady then tells him that he is ranked first in the world for yin virtue, but she tells him that if he wants to prolong his mother's life, he has to accumulate more good merit as possible. Later that night, the lady tells him that he earned a total of 11 points in good merit, and it is not a bad harvest. But as Hao tells the lady that 11 points are really good gains, as the world is now full of hypocrisy, he suddenly hears a girl's voice telling some people to leave her alone. Hao checks and sees a bunch of men holding the girl, and they tell her that she should come and have fun with them. But the girl tells them to let her go or else she is going to call the cops on them. Then Hao suddenly notices that the girl is his campus goddess crush, and he becomes angry, and he immediately calls on Xiaobei, the lady, on his phone. Xiaobei then tells him that there are 2 skills for his benefit, and he can use the ghost upper body, which can be converted for a year of yang longevity. Hao uses the ghost upper body, and suddenly the men begin to feel that their eyes are vanishing, and they begin to yell at each other as they are asking themselves what is happening. Hao walks up to the men, and they ask him who he is, but he does not reply to them, and he begins to beat them up one after the other. Then they try to use their weapon against him, but the girl immediately yells his name and tells him to be careful as he is already surrounded by the men. After defeating the men, Hao sees one of them hiding behind the girl, and he tells the man that he should not hide behind her. Then the man immediately runs away, and the girl goes to meet Hao, and she thanks him for saving her life, but she begins to cry, and Hao consoles her that he had to help her because she was in trouble. Hao removes his cloth and gives the girl to wear it because her cloth is torn, and when she wears it, he sees one of the men crying in a corner, and as he moves towards the man begins to beg him not to come closer to him. Ning Hao then tells the girl that he would escort her home, and a few minutes later, they arrive at her house. Then Hao's phone gets a notification, and when he checks it, Xiaobei tells him that as he saved the girl, he has gotten 100 points of virtue, and the girl that Hao had just saved gives him her number and tells him that she would invite him for dinner later. Hao immediately tells the girl that it is getting late, and he would contact her later. Then he leaves, but as he turns to go, the girl becomes scared as he leaves first. On his way home, Hao tells Xiaobei that Zhao Zhilong left his body and his moves against the enemy disappeared without a trace, but he asks her if there is a way to make those moves stay in his body forever. Then she answers him and tells him that the next time the ghost has possessed him, he can try to ask the ghost if he wants to be reincarnated. Then the ghost may promise him to exchange his moves with yin virtue. But she also informs him that the ghost spirit moves need a lot of yin virtue, as he only has life to change and not to use. Hao gets home, and he sees a lot of people at the entrance of his apartment. Then he passes between them, and he hears as the landlady begins to yell at him that they should pay up their rent, but Hao ignores her nad as he enters the house. He shuts the door at her face. Hao sees his mother crying as his sister is consoling her. Then he tells them that he is going out back, but his sister comes to meet him, and asks him why he is going back as he just arrived. Then he tells them that he is going out to find a friend so that he would be able to sort out the money they are owing. On the road, Ho asks Xiaobai if she has any ideas for him to make money. Then she tells him about the little ghost treasure hunt that consists of a treasure that is unowned or unclaimed, but he has to follow the little ghost to find the location of the treasure in order to redeem it. Suddenly, a little ghost comes out of his phone and Xiaobai tells him to follow the ghost in order to find the location of the treasure, but the ghost leads Ha to an abandoned factory. Then he asks Xiaobai where the treasure is, but she tells him that he has to dig the treasure up. Soon, Ho starts digging, but at a point, he tells Xiaobai that he cannot see any treasure, and he wants his 100 yin virtue back. But she tells him that once he's started the treasure hunt, he cannot be refunded. As Ha continues to dig, he suddenly hits something, and Xiaobai tells him that what he just hit seemed powerful. In Ninghao's house, his mother and sister begin to pack their loads as the owner of the house has told them to pack out, because they are not able to pay their rent. Hao suddenly opens the door, and his mother sees that he is covered in dirt, but as she tells him to go and wash his body, she asks him why he is looking like that, but Hao tells them that they should go and rest as he would pack the remaining loads so that they can move out the following day. In his room, Hao opens the briefcase with him, and he suddenly sees a huge amount of money in it. Then he tells himself that his mother and sister does not necessarily have to know where the money came from, as they only need to look for a new house to pack into, so that he can now look for how to earn more yin virtue. Hao suddenly sees the card Tang Jianjin, the girl he saved earlier, gave to him, and when he calls her, he asks her for a favor, asking her if she could get a house that they could rent and pack to the following day. Then Jianjin tells him that there is an old gentleman's house whose family went abroad, so she tells him that they can still rest there. Ha then asks Jianjin the amount of the rent per year, but she tells him that the house is for sale, and he thanks her as he also tells her that she should come and pick them the following day, and he would send their address to her. But after dropping the call, Jianjin becomes excited as she places her phone on her chest and lays on her bed. The following day, as Jianjin comes to help them to pack into a new house, Hao's mother asks him if Jianjin is his girlfriend, but Jianjin replies her that they are just classmates. Then they suddenly hear the voice of their landlady as she begins to yell at them for trying to run away. But Hao tells her that they are not trying to run away. Then he moves towards the landlady and the thugs she brought and hands over a sum of 12,000 for the payment of their rent for 12 months. After giving her the money, the thugs try to hit Ha, but he immediately calls Xiaobai, and she suddenly gives him the ghost power again, and he uses it to blind the woman and her thugs, and they begin to hit each other. Hao's mother tells him that the people are fighting, but he tells her not to pay attention to them, as they are a bunch of psychos. But as Jianjin looks at Hao, she begins to tell herself that he is looking more handsome to her. When they arrive at the house, Jianjin opens the door, and when they get into it, she tells them that they can stay there temporarily because of the basic furniture there, but as Hao asks for the price of the house, Jianjin immediately pulls him and tells him that they should talk outside. While they are outside, Jianjin tells Hao that the house is not a good deal to purchase, as the price of the house is 50 million yuan, and it is not a penny less. Then he tells her that it's expensive. Then she informs him that the owner had said that he would give the house for free to anyone that can help him to open a lock, as he had traveled around the world to find who could unlock it, but he has not found anyone. Jianjin hands over the key to the house to Hao, and she tells him that she is going home. Then as Hao sits to rest, he suddenly sees his dead classmate Mo Tingting as she comes out of his phone, and he becomes shocked. Mo Tingting asks Xiaobai that she has to talk to Hao about something. Then Hao asks Mo Tingting what she wants from him. Mo Tingting tells Hao that when the school bursts into flames, she rushes into the flames to save her boyfriend, Liu Yang, but she suddenly starts to choke, and she then woke up in hell, and when she went to the reincarnation table, she found out that she did not burn to death, but Liu Yan had left her to die as he ran away that day. Mo Tingting begins to cry, and Xiaobai begins to console her, but Hao asks her what she wants him to do, and she tells him that she read Liu Yan's fortune in the Yin Yang book the previous day, and she learned that his chance to move up his life is that same night. But before she could tell him what he has to do, Hao begins to wonder that one can never offend women. Liu Yan sits amongst some men in the bar, and one of the men asks the others if they see how awesome Liu Yan is, because after a year of his graduation, he became the head manager of the branch of the Ascension Group. But the man tells Liu Yan that he should not forget about his old buddies later. Liu Yan begins to tell himself that Zhao Mingmin, who is the daughter of Ascension Group current CEO, is in love with him, and he was given charge over one of their subsidiary business. Then he tells himself that he only has to maintain his hold over her, so that he would be okay throughout his life. He also adds that he has to hold on to Mingmin even though she is hideous, but she has money which would make him rich, and he would get as many women as he wants, and even already has a pretty girl with him. Soon, a lady enters, and she goes to meet Liu Yan, and asks him that he had promised her to get her the latest phone, but Yan tells her that he has bought it for her, but it is inside his car, and he also tells her that she is not supposed to come and meet him because people are not meant to see them together. Suddenly, Mingmin begins to call Yun, but before he picks the call, he tells the lady beside him that she should keep quiet. Then he picks the call and tells Mingmin that he is still at the office and he just finished looking at some documents. Then Mingmin tells him that he should join her for dinner at the artisan cuisine because her father wants to see him. After dropping the call, Yun tells the lady and Mingmin is about to come and see him and they cannot be seen together, and after he tells the lady, Yun begins to wonder why Mingmin's father wants to see him all of a sudden, and he also tells himself that it may be true of the rumor that the CEO of the Ascension Group wants to fly abroad to undergo a life-saving surgery, and it seems like he might plan to entrust his daughter to him before he goes. The lady with Yun then asks him if he is coming to her place that night as she is scared of being alone, but Yun tells her that she should go home and wait for his call. But as they walk down the halls, Mingmin suddenly sees Yun with the lady, and she asks who the lady is. Then Yun tells Mingmin that the lady is his cousin and she is drunk. The lady suddenly yells at Yun as she asks him why he is calling her his cousin, and she also asks him who Mingmin is. Then Mingmin becomes angry, and she begins to yell at Yun. Mingmin's father also sees this, and he begins to wonder what kind of man Liu Yun is. Then Yun also sees Ningha, but he immediately tells him that he did not think that he would ever meet him in such a place. Mingmin begins to yell at Yun as she sees the men with him, and she immediately recognizes them as the men who had assaulted her in the past, but Liu Yun tries to talk to her as he tells her that the men she saw bullied him to follow them. Then Ho begins to tell Yun that he had always been like that, as he also used to carry and deceive ladies during his secondary school days. Mingmin immediately slaps Liu Yun, and her father suddenly calls the police that they should come and arrest the men who wanted to take advantage of his daughter, and on hearing this, Liu Yun's friends begin to deny him, and they also tell Mingmin that he had paid them $20 to put on that act. The lady that came to meet Yun before then tells him that she is going home, and he should not forget her new phone, but Liu Yun ignores her, and he immediately goes to beg Mingmin's father, but he pushes him away. Then Liu Yun asks Hao why he has decided to ruin his life, but Hao reminds him of how he made a girl abort her pregnancy for him, and also how he made Mo Tingting die in a fire accident, and Hao finally tells him that it is his time to pay for all the bad things he has done in his lives. Seo Bai immediately sends a notification to Hao that he has lost 1,000 karma for ruining someone's future, but as Hao sees that, he tells himself that he has been cheated. Hao then sees that he has earned 100 karma points, and he tells himself that it is hard to get those points, but it is more easy to lose them. Then as Hao and Ting Jianjin turns to go, Mingmin's father, Zhou Zheng tells them that he would give them a lift, but as they're in the car, Ho begins to look at Mingmin's features, and he sees how unique her skin tone is. Suddenly, Mo Tingting tells Hao that there is nothing wrong with Xiao Zhen, as he only need to rest and be calm. But if he ends up going to America for the surgery, he would die as a result of complications. Then Hao immediately tells Zhou Zheng that he knows that he is having trouble with his heart, and he informs him that he has something that would cure him, and he would not have to travel. But Mingmin begins to wonder that she has not told anyone about her father's real illness, and she immediately suspects Ting Jianjin. As she looks at Jianjin, she immediately tells her not to look at her, as she did not tell Hao about her father's illness. Then Mingmin tells Hao that her father would go for the surgery, but Hao tells Zhao Zheng that if he is right. Zhou Zheng has some black warts on his hand and another in his butt, and he tells them that if they give him 15 days, he would make Mingmin's father better. Jianjin then tells Zhou Zheng and Mingmin that Hao has some uncanny abilities, and she has not told him about his condition, and she has witnessed 3 people going blind, just because he had commanded it, and she feels that they should listen to Hao. But Mingmin tells them that she does not believe Hao, and Hao begins to wonder why Mingmin is so stubborn, and immediately, Zhou Zheng tells Hao and Jianjin that it is impossible for the rumor of his condition to get out, and he does not know who had sent them, but he would tell them that the fortune of his company would only be transferred to his daughter after he dies. Suddenly, Zhao Zheng tells the driver to stop the car, and they sends Hao and Jianjin out of the car, but Hao and Jianjin tells Mingmin that they are not after anything from them. Then Mingmin tells them that her father is unwell, so they cannot take them to their destination. But Hao tells her that if they do not believe him, he only has an advice for them, and it is for them not to take Mingmin's father to America for the surgery, or else he would die on that table. As the car leaves, Jianjin immediately asks Hao if he is sure of all what he said, and he replies her that he is. Then she tells him that she believes him, but Jianjin immediately tells him that they should go and look for what to eat. And as they begin to go, Jianjin walks closely to Hao, and as she holds him, she begins to ask herself why she is getting attached to Hao. He then asks her the kind of perfume that she is using, but she tells him that it is how she smells naturally. But as they begin to walk, Hao stops abruptly and he grabs Jianjin. Then she closes her eyes to kiss him. Hao tries to remove some dirt in Jianjin's eyes, but she thinks he was about to kiss her, and when he removes the dirt, Jianjin begins to get angry as he could not get the hint Then she checks her phone and she tells him to go home as she has to pick up a relative at the airport. The following day, Hao's mother takes Hao and his sister to the grave of their grandfather in order to pay tribute. Then she says that she has brought his grandchildren to him, but they suddenly hear someone calling out to their mother that she should stop her false tears. The woman continues and tells them that everyone knows that they have no money, so there is no point in all of their offerings, and she immediately tells her bodyguards to clear their offerings away from the tombstone. The men begins to scatter the whole sacrifice, then Hao tells them that they should get out, but the woman tells her bodyguards to send them away. And Hao's mother asks the woman why her brother is not there to pay his tribute to their father, but the woman tells her that her brother is busy competing with the Ascension Group for development rights to the West City District. The woman proceeds to also insult Hao's mother and the man that she married, but at that point, Hao tells the woman named Liu Mai that they are also family, so they have every right to come to their grandfather's grave. Liu Mai does not listen, and her bodyguards try to send them away, but as the men try to push them away, Hao tells them that he would deal with them. As Hao takes out his phone to tell Xiaobei to give him a power, he sees that his phone's battery is low, then his mother drags him to go, but after they had gone, Liu Mai begins to tell herself that Tang Zijuan's children are both approaching adulthood, which is going to be their greatest problem, and she also says that she has to do what Tang Zixiang is not strong enough to get done by himself. In their house, Hao begins to wonder that if his phone had not been dead, he would have dealt with Liu Mai and her bodyguards, as he would have traded another year of his life to invoke the spirit of Bai Cha the Butcher. But he tells himself that he would not be able to stand up to his uncles. Mo Tingting suddenly calls Hao in a video call, and when he picks it, she thanks Hao for helping her out. Then she presents him with a gift, and Hao tells her that he had told Zhou Zheng about his fate, and he hopes it does not affect her, but she tells him that it is no problem. Mo Tingting tells Hao that she found some treasure for him, and she hopes he has some karma points ready. Suddenly, Hao begins to feel something in his chest, then his phone brings a notification that he has completed dark banishment. After completing the banishment, Hao thanks Tingting and asks her how the power works, but she tells him that he should not get too excited, that it takes 100,000 karma to activate the spell. Hao begins to wonder how many good deeds that would attract that much karma point, but he is interrupted by Tang Lanlin, who tells him that she is around, and she wants him to follow her to help her with her admission in her school. Lanlin tells Hao that she cannot shake off the feeling that he has some special abilities, and she wants to take him to see someone which she believes that his powers would prove to be useful, but he tells her that she should let him take his phone. While in the car, Lanlin begins to wonder if Hao is interested in her, and she asks herself if she would have to strip herself naked for him to understand that she likes him. Then suddenly, she tells Hao that the owner of the house they are living in is back, and he wants to meet with Hao. That she also adds that he was the one she went to pick at the airport. Lanlin also tells Hao that the man named Uncle Lee is an old friend of his father, and she would like to introduce him to Uncle Lee, as he has a lock that no one can be able to crack open, and she believes that he would be able to use his powers to unlock it. Then she also adds that it would also be an opportunity to talk to Uncle Lee about Hao's younger sister named Lu, because Uncle Lee was a big deal in Jovian City's administrative circles. Hao then asks Lanlin the kind of lock Uncle Lee could not open, but she tells him that she has not seen the lock, but the man had turned down the men she had introduced to him in the past. Few minutes later, they get to Uncle Lee's office and Lanlin introduces Hao to him, but Uncle Lee tells them that Hao cannot unlock the lock. Then Hao tells him that he should try him out as he has some secret family techniques, and Uncle Lee immediately tells Lanlin to excuse them. Uncle Lee then shows Hao a painting of a woman with a lock, and tells him that the lock in the painting is the lock he wants to crack open. Then he also explains to Hao that the woman in the painting is Zhen Man, who is also known as the Enchanting Empress of the Kingdom of Wei, and the box was a gift to her from KOP. But after Uncle Lee's explanation, Hao tells him that he is actually seeking the key to his heart. As Hao begins to think about what he would do, Uncle Lee begins to wonder if Lanlin is right about Hao. Then he asks Hao about his sister, and he tells Hao that if he could help him with his wish, he would make sure his sister is admitted to any school of her choice. Hao makes a deal with Uncle Lee, and he tells him to lay down on his sofa so that he would prepare a date with Uncle Lee and send Mai in Uncle Lee's dream. Then Hao uses 100 karma points, and he uses it to set up a meeting through lucid dreams for Uncle Lee and Zheng Mei. Hao goes out of Uncle Lee's office, and when he sees Lanlin, she takes him to a restaurant and orders a lot of exquisite foods as she tells him that she is fulfilling her promise of treating him to a meal. Then as they continue to eat, Lanlin tells Hao that she has a request, and the request is that, but he tells her that he is at her disposal as she has helped him. Lanlin tells Hao that her parents are trying to make her marry a man that she does not like, but she notices that her mother likes the man. Then Hao tells her that she should try to talk to her parents, but she immediately starts crying, and she begins to go home. As Hao gets home, he lays on his bed, and he receives a notification that he has gotten karma points for helping Uncle Lee. Then after some minutes, Uncle Lee calls Hao and thanks him for the date. Then he tells him that the deed of the apartment would be changed to his name the following day, and regarding his younger sister's admission, they would get good news in a couple of weeks. He also adds that he enjoyed the encounter with Zhen Mai, but he asks Hao if he could set up another date for him, but Hao immediately drops the call as he tells Uncle Lee that he cannot hear him because of the reception. Hao then asks Xiaobei that he wants to permanently acquire the combat techniques by unholy might. Then she tells him that he has to be a top-class customer, and in order to be on the top-class customer, he has to have spent up to 10,000 karma points. Xiaobei immediately explains to Hao about how the exchange works. Then she also helps him to look for a customer that would exchange his own power for karma points, and when the exchange is made, Xiaobei tells Hao that their expert is on their way, and if he is pleased with the service, he should give her a good review. As Hao is about to go to bed, he begins to play as he gets excited about his new skill. Then the following morning, after getting ready, he immediately dresses up to go to Consulate Lane in order to meet Lanlin in her house, but as he gets to the street, he begins to ask for directions. Then he suddenly gets a call, and as he picks it, the person asks him if he is Ning Hao, and he says that his boss, Minister Li, has asked him to deliver something to Hao, but suddenly a car parks in front of Hao and a man comes down from the car. The man then tells him that he is the one that called in them. He immediately hands over an envelope to Hao, but Hao asks the man the name of the ministry Master Li was working at, but the man tells him that he has to ask the minister himself, and he also tells Hao that he should save the number he used to call him so that Ho can call him anytime he needs anything. As the man drives off, Ho begins to tell himself that he would keep his distance from Uncle Lee as much as possible. Then Ho arrives at a mansion, and he admires it as it is twice the size of his own house, and he tells himself that the guest has arrived, and he would have to crash the party. As Hao is about to enter, he sees the two bodyguards that had followed his aunt Liu Mai the other day, and he begins to insult them as they have refused to let him enter. But one of the bodyguards tells the other that he might be the friend of the young master's fiancée. Then they let him enter, but when Hao enters the gathering, he sees Lanlin, and he immediately tells himself that she is so beautiful. But he quickly calls himself into order, and he greets Lanlin's parents and tells them that he is Lanlin's friend, but he suddenly sees his cousin Tang Huang and his parents. Then he begins to realize that he was the pest Lanlin was referring to. Hao then tells Lanlin that the world is now civilized, and she should be able to choose for herself which she wants between Tang Huang and himself, but Tang Huang suddenly rushes at Hao, and he yells at him that he should not try to compete with him over Lanlin's hand in marriage. Lanlin immediately shuts Tang Huang as she tells him to let go of her boyfriend, but Liu Mai, who is Tang Huang's mother, begins to insult Hao that he is a wretched human just like his father, and she also proceeds to tell Lanlin's parent that they should not allow their daughter to marry a penniless man. Hao tells them that they should give their daughter the right to choose, but Lanlin's parents tells him to leave, and Lanlin immediately goes to meet Hao and holds him tight, but Liu Mai begins to insult Hao again. Then he replies her that his family now has a home of their own. Then he shows them the deed of property Uncle Lee had sent to him before. They all become shocked by this, and suddenly Hao tells all of them that Lanlin is bearing his flesh and blood. Then they all become surprised. Lanlin's parents begin to say that Lanlin is not a girl like that, but Hao tells them that if they do not believe him, they should ask Lanlin herself. Then Hao immediately winks at Lanlin, but she tells them that it is not true. Liu Mai begins to tell Lanlin's parents that Hao is not a good man, and Tang Huang tries to send him out of the gathering, but Hao immediately uses his power to beat Tang Huang up and his mother. Liu Mai immediately calls the bodyguards and tells them to deal with Hao, and if they beat him to death, she would be responsible for it. Then Ho begins to fight with the bodyguards. Suddenly, Zhao Mingmin comes in. Then she begins to tease Lanlin that two men are fighting for her hand, but Lanlin tells her that it is not true. But Mingmin tells Hao that her father wants to see him, and he replies her that he is busy as he has to be there for Lanlin. Mingmin goes to meet Lanlin and asks her to beg Hao to follow her to see her father, as her father's life depends on their meeting, but Lanlin tells her that if she tells Hao to leave, he would not answer. Then Tang Huang's parents begins to wonder why Mingmin is so familiar with Hao. As Hao continues to fight with the bodyguards, Tang Huang suddenly attacks him, and he hits something on Hao's head, but Ho grabs him and tells him that he has been bullying him for long, but he would not let him go. Then Hao punches Tang Huang, and he passes out. Tang Huang's parent begins to tell Hao that they would arrest Hao for trying to murder their son, but Mingmin immediately yells at them that if they touch Hao, her company would stop the contract between Ascension Group and Tang Reality. Then Hao's aunt and uncle immediately takes their son and says that they would take him to the hospital, and they also inform Lanlin's parents that they would be back to continue the engagement process, but Hao immediately stops them and tells them that he would not allow them to choose for Lanlin. He also adds that he is the cure to Zhao Zheng's illness, and if they do not want to lose their contract with Ascension Group, I should stop Tang Huang from seeing Lanlin. Then Lanlin looks at how Hao is injured, and she begins to tell herself that he had stood for her even with the fact that he is injured. He is still fulfilling his promise to her. Hao goes to meet Tang Huang's father and he tells him that his bad deeds is too much as he wants to use his son to get what he wants. Then Hao announces it to everyone present, that Lanlin would be given the chance to marry anybody of her choice, and he immediately calls Mingmin that they should go and cure her father. As they're in the car going to the Zhao residence, Mingmin apologizes to Hao about how she had insulted him, and she tells him that she would give him anything he wants, including herself, if he could cure her father. But Hao tells her that he already has a lover. Then she tells him that she was only kidding, and he should not take what she said seriously. Hao checks his phone, and he gets a notification from Xiaobai, and she asks him if she should add him to a special group where he can meet gorgeous ladies who can either be mortals or immortals. Then she also explains to him that they'll make good purchases of karma points, but he shows no interest, and he tells her that she should add him. Hao then asks Mingmin why she suddenly believes that he could cure her father, and she replies him that the black wart that he said was on his father's body was not there before until after the scan he did the previous day. Then Hao tells her that she should believe him and not make her father travel abroad for the surgery, as he is only going to give him a special medicine that he would use for 15 cents, and he would be cured. And Mingmin tells Hao that she would be happy if he cures her father, and she would also give him $1 million, but he tells her not to worry as he would ask for what he wants from her father after curing him. Soon, they arrive at the Zhao residence, and Zhou Zhang begins to apologize to Hao for sending him out of their car a few days ago. But Hao tells him that he has forgotten about it. Then Zhou Zhang asks Hao if he could be healed, and he tells him that it is not too late to cure him, but he would only cure him on some fee conditions. Hao tells Zhou Zhang that he should not be in business with bad people, and he tells him that he should stop the contract between Ascension Group and his uncle's company. Then Mingmin immediately goes to inform her father that the owners of Realty are Hao's relatives. Hao also adds that they should collect the contract from his uncle, and they should give it to Lanlin's family business, as they are in need of the money. Zhao Zhang eventually agrees to Hao's condition, and he asks for water so that he would use it to prepare the special drug, but he begins to pretend like he is using a form of power, and he gives Zhou Zhang to drink, but Hao checks his phone as he has been receiving notifications. As Hao checks it, he notices that in the group that Xiaobai added him on, there are a lot of beautiful ladies in it, and as he chats with them for a while, he tells them that he has to attend to something, and he would text them later. As Hao drops his phone, he suddenly sees Mingmin as she comes out of her room staring at him. After taking the medicine, Zhou Zhang tells Hao that he should go to eat lunch, but he asks Zhou Zhang if he can get a good and quiet place to rest instead, and Zhou Zhang tells him that after he eats his lunch, he would be given a place to rest. After eating, Hao is taken to a quiet room, and when he settles, he calls his mother to inform her that he would not be coming home for a few days, and after he called his mother, he also receives a call from Lanlin, and she tells him that he should be careful as Tang Guang has some thugs and they might go after Hao, because he had beaten Huang earlier that day. But Hao tells her that she should not worry about him, and he would be fine because he can protect himself. Then he also tells her that Tang Zixiang would soon lose the contract with Ascension Group. Lanlin asks him if he is the cause, but he tells her that it is Mingmin's father that made the decision that he does not want to work with heartless people. But after ending the call with Lanlin, Hao begins to tell himself that Lanlin's family would soon be able to stand on its feet back, as the contract would be given to them. Before going to bed, Hao contacts Xiaobai, and he asks her for a favor, but before he could tell her what the favor is, he asks her about the jade stones that they regard as trash in their world. Then he asks her if he would be able to bring it to Earth, as it would be of good profit to him if he starts selling them. Xiaobai assures him that she would send the jade stone, but Hao then tells her that she should help him to search for the will his grandfather originally wrote for his properties in the incarnation table. The following day, Hao administers another dosage of his special medicine to Zhao Zhang, then he heads out. Hao goes to greet his friend Xing Yun, but when he gets there, he meets his sister Xing Tian instead, and after exchanging pleasantries, Hao asks her about her work, but she tells him that her brother have gone to help her with her job, and soon Xing Yu comes in and he tells his sister to go inside as he wants to discuss something with Hao. Xing Yu tells Hao that he went to the printing company that his sister was working at before, and he realizes that the new rich man that his sister's boss had gotten is Liu Yun, and he immediately resigned on behalf of his sister so that Liu Yun would not ruin her life. Hao then tells Yu that he wants to make a call, and when he gets outside, he calls Zhao Zhang and asks him if they know where Liu Yin is, and he tells him that the police are looking for him as he had escaped with the documents to some of their properties, and he also took the company car. Then Hao tells him that Liu Yun is at a printing press in the city, and he should send the police to the address. Hao then tells Yu that he should follow him to the printing press, as he would enjoy what is about to happen to Liu Yun. But when they get there, they see Liu Yun and the owner of the printing company as they are about to go out. Then Hao and Yu begins to cause trouble so that they would delay Liu Yun and the lady, but the lady immediately instructs her guards and some men to beat up Hao and Yu. Hao beats up the men, and when he grabs Liu Yun, he immediately starts to beg Hao to let him go, and the lady becomes surprised as he had told her that he was from Indonesia. And soon the police come to capture Liu Yun as they tell the lady that he was wanted for stealing and fraud. After the police had taken Liu Yun away, the owner of the printing company begins to thank Hao for saving her. But she tells him that she would have to close down the company, and Hao tells her that he would buy her company. Then she tells him that she would sell it for 2.7 million. And as Ho begins to think, he tells himself that the amount she mentioned is the same amount of the total amount of money he has left. So he tells the lady that she should reduce the price, and she tells him that he should buy the company at the rate of 2.5 million. And Hao tells her that it is a deal. Hao buys the printing company, and he tells the workers there that they can still stay as the pay would be the same, and he also puts Zhu Xingxian in charge of the company. But Yu asks him what he would help him do oversee, and Hao tells him that he would appoint him as his personal assistant. Then he gives him a work that he should get him 2 craftsmen who are skilled in carving stones. At the Zhao residence, Zhao Zheng thanks Hao for helping him to capture Liu Yun, and he also tells him that they have collected the contract from Tang Realty, and they have given it to Lanlin's family company, Hori Group. After having dinner, Ho goes to his room, and as he checks some pictures, he suddenly sees a message about the whereabouts of his grandfather's will. Then he tells himself that he is happy that he would be able to get a hold of it. Soon, Hao asks Xiaobai about the jade stone, and she tells him that she would have it delivered, but she begins to beg Hao to let her have a share in his new business of the stones. But Hao asks her why she suddenly wants to have a share with him, and she begins to explain that it would earn her more money, so that she would be able to upgrade in their world, and she would gain access to the all-seeing mirror. She also explains that she would be able to use the mirror to find anything he needs her to find, but after persuading Hao, he agrees to give her 10% shares, and she becomes excited as she tells him that she would serve him well, and she would also take him like a mortal brother to her. After this conversation with Xiaobai, Ho begins to think as he already has 29 years of yang left, and he says to himself that it cannot be enough to extend the life of his mother, because he would be a bad son if he cannot use what he has to save his dying mother's life. Ho walks into a jewelry store, and he asks the attendants that he wants to see their jade stones, but he suddenly sees a huge red jade stone, and when he asks, the attendant tells him that it is not for sale. But as the attendant is about to take him to see the products, another woman enters with a customer, and she instructs the first attendant that she should show the customer she brought their wares while she take Hao to see the jade stones. She takes Hao and shows him some jade stones, but Hao tells her that he wants to buy a jade stone toothpick. Then the woman brings out jade stone grasshoppers, and she tells him that he should cut one of its legs and use it as a toothpick when he buys it. Ho notices that the first attendant that he met came back, and he immediately drags her and says that he wants her, but the lady begins to tell him to let go of her hand, and Ho ignores her. Ho draws the attendant to one of the rooms in the store, and he apologizes to her that he only wanted her to help him to check his jade ores. And when he begins to bring out the jade stones that was sent to him from Xiaobai, the attendant begins to cry as she has never seen jade stones in its raw form. Then he strikes a deal with her, but the company would pay him 50 million. And he also tells her that if he gets more, he would come and sell it to them. As he is about to leave, Sadako tells him that he is already ranked as a VIP in the realm, and they have assigned her to be his personal assistant. And he asks her how he can get karma points, as he is not able to get more since then. She tells him of how he could get karma points, as someone is interested to trade karma points for red jade stones. After talking to Sadako, Xiaobai tells Hao that he should get her new clothes, as the one she is wearing is getting old, and Hao promises her to buy any cloth she chooses from the catalog he told her to check. Xiaobai tells him how he would scan and send the clothes to her, and Hao immediately tells his driver that he should take him to his printing company. On getting to there, Xingxian complains to Hao that they have printed up to 1 billion of ritual money, and there is not way they can dispose it, but he tells her that they should keep printing it, and he hands her an address that they should be putting the money on Sadako's tombstone every day. As Xingxian takes the money and checks the name Sadako, she suddenly remembers that Hao had a crush on Sadako when she was alive, and she immediately vows to help Hao deliver the money to the tombstone. Ming checks his phone and sees a lot of missed calls and decides to call the number. The person tells him his proposition and offers him the West City project in exchange for 2 lives. He also threatens Ning that if it is not granted by the end of the day, he should prepare for 2 funerals. Ning begins to wonder whose lives he is talking about and hurries to check on his mom and his sister. He calls his mom and notices that both his mom and his little sister are not picking up their phones. He quickly hurries home and notices that the entire house is empty and realizes that his mom and his little sister has been kidnapped. He suspects Tang, as he might have sent someone to be kidnapped after finding out that the Azelmine Ascension group is cutting in on the deal. Ning begins to wonder how he will handle it without having to endanger their lives or set off an alarm. He immediately remembers something Lanlin told him about her uncle and quickly places a call out to her. He tells Lanlin to inform her uncle that he will need his army friend's help and promises to grant his wishes if his mission is accomplished, and she promises to call him immediately. His driver asks him if everything is okay, and he ignores him and picks up his phone to receive a call. He sees Wang Tixing and informs him that his mother and sister have been kidnapped, and he wants him to rescue them quietly without alerting their captors or endangering the lives of his family. The driver asks him if they can take a look at the few locations he has regarding similar issues, and as he was once in such situations. He also brings out a weapon, and Ning asks him if he carries it with him everywhere he goes, and he tells Ning not to underestimate him, as he was an undercover agent in the province before joining the family. He tells Ning that he has solved a lot of cases, and Ning begins to wonder how Zhao Zheng's driver used to be a super spy. Ning immediately calls him by his call sign and asks him to show him the liar he is talking about. The driver hands him the weapon and starts the car, and Ning places the weapon in his pants. On getting there, the driver instructs him to wait for him, as it might be too dangerous, and he will get his family back soon. He immediately jumps into the building, and Ning becomes surprised, as he is someone with stories to tell. Ning checks his messages and sees that Wang has dispatched an entire detachment unit of special forces, and Ning tells him to protect his family by all means necessary. Wang tells him that the building is on lockdown and everyone there will be killed. Ning begins to wonder if his driver will be caught in the crossfire, but he cannot reveal to Wang that he is a spy. Ning immediately rushes into the building to try and warn his driver about the attack of the building. He goes in and notices that the environment is entirely dark and sees just a bulb in the corridor. He immediately hears the special forces attacking and tells himself that if the soldiers would not recognize him on sight, then friendly fire is entirely possible. He immediately opens a door and sees his mom and his little sister rush out from a room. He immediately grabs onto them, and they see him and they tell him they were saved by the driver without being noticed. The driver then tell him that he encountered some masked men and he has managed to take care of them, but he has sustained a minor injury. Ning immediately assists the Agent Hurricane, tells Ning that he did not expect to see mercenaries as it is going to be very dangerous. Ning goes down and informs his mom and sister to jump down as he promises to catch them. Ning's mom immediately grabs hold of her daughter and throws her down. Ning sees her coming and immediately grabs her. Ning's mom comes down and they notice that the mercenaries have caught up to them, and they begin to make a run for it. They get into the car. The driver tells Ning to go on without him as he will hold them off. They begin to advance towards Ning, and he notices that the men are not their soldiers and begins to beat them up. One of them grabs his driver and promises to cut open his throat if he does not stop. Ning tries to negotiate with the thug, and the thug promises to go his own way as soon as he is free. Ning informs him that he does not know how to drive, making them all surprised. The thug leaves Agent Hurricane, and Ning rushes to grab him to make sure he is okay. They both see that the thug is dead and sees the soldiers telling them not to move. Ning informs them that he is a friend to Wang and asks them to call an ambulance. Ning plans to go see Zhao and deliver his medicine to him, as there is no one he can trust to hand him the medicine. He also plans to build up a circle of capable people on his own. Zhao thanks Ning for the medicine and informs him that he has to leave there as it is not safe for him. Zhao takes the medicine and tells him that he is aware of the other day's event, and it was his carelessness that caused his family undue stress. Ning tells him not to blame himself, as he is the one who was too gracious with crooks, and they thought they could make a victim of him. Zhao begins to think about how miraculous his skills are and how he remains calm and notices that there is no limit to his potential. Zhao immediately tells him that he has a friend whose daughter has a serious illness, and if he can cure her, he would surely be grateful. Ning immediately tells him to take her to the doctors, as it is only fate that can lead his healing hands. Zhao explains the urgency of the matter to Ning and tells him that she has attempted suicide severally because of it, and it would be an act of great virtue and worth tremendous positive karma. Ning begins to wonder what has gotten into him and asks him if he shares a personal relationship with her. Zhao clears the air and tells him that she is the daughter of his dearest friend in the world, and it was Lin Zhongshan that helped him out when he fell broke when doing a business. Ning thinks about it for a while and asks him what type of affliction the daughter has, and Zhao tells him everything. After hearing the story, Ning wonders if she has been possessed, and Zhao tells him that she is perfectly normal during the day but tries to hang herself at night. Ning tells him that he understands what is going on and tells him that it will be all for the day and takes his leave. On his way, he calls Xiaobai, and she picks up, telling him that she is at his disposal. He compliments her on her new dressing and tells her how beautiful she looks, and she gives him the credit for looking beautiful. Ning narrates the entire story that Zhao had told him and tells her that the girl is attempting to hang herself from the same tree. Xiaobai tells him that she is obviously being hunted, and the boy plans to take her to hell so that they can be together. Ning asks if there is anything that can be done, and she promises him that she will take care of it if only he can wait another 5 months. He begins to try and convince her, seeing the girl might not last that long, and asks her if he can do it himself. She promises to get him a banishment seal and advises him on how to use it. Ning thanks her and ends the call and immediately receives a lot of messages on his phone. He begins to audit the women's conversation and exits himself from the group. Ning is trying to rest a bit, and Xingyu suddenly calls him, and Ning asks if he has gotten the jade stones he asked for. He tells him that he has found a lead, and he found out that cousin is trained in the art, and his skills are coming through. Ning tells him that he only needs someone who can clean and tidy up rough ore. He tells him to tell his cousin that he will double his pay if he can come to the city. Xingyu also tells him that he has found a building they can use as a workshop, and they could acquire it very cheaply. Ning requests for the address and promises to take a look. He sends him the address, and Ning enters his car and heads for the antique store. Ning arrives at the antique store and sees a lot of people in the market and walks in. He goes to the building and a man meets him, and he is told that he is the owner of the house and he will be willing to sell it for 3 million. He also tells him that he is ready to sign over the property immediately. Ning begins to think and looks at the environment and wonders why he wants to sell a 3-story building with 2 balconies for 3 million. Xingyu immediately tells him that he has asked around about the place and he can say that the place is haunted. He also tells him that the man willing to sell the property has 2 of his family members insane due to the factor of the house being haunted. Ning asks him what is haunting the building, and Xingyu tells him that everyone he has asked has warned them not to risk it. Ning insists they have a look inside the building, and they go into the building. Ning begins to see that the building would be good for a business and sees that the building has a lot of space and is tightly sealed. Ning tells them that it is a perfect location to set up shop and asks him if there is still room to negotiate. Xingyu immediately begins to feel cold and wonders how, since it is the height of summer. The owner suddenly insists they go downstairs, but Ning insists on staying as he would love to look around for a while. Ning advances into the building and sees that the tree is moving and goes to look at it and begins to wonder how it is able to move. He sees that the apricot tree is what is causing the depreciation of local property values. He immediately calls Xiaobai and tells her to take a look at the tree and asks her what she thinks. She tells him that it is an old tree, but he tells her that he senses something wrong with the tree, and he senses traces of human emotion. Ning immediately asks her how he can confirm his thoughts. She instructs him on what to do, and he plans to have his mom and his sis do the same so that they will be safe there. Ning goes downstairs to see the tree and asks it if it will form a pact with him. He begins to dig up and sees a box underneath it and drops his blood on it, and he notices that his blood is not staying on it, and it tries to attack him. Ning attacks the tree and begins to wonder what he is seeing. Ning sees that the demon in the tree has lived for 3 centuries and can live in the victim's mind and leaving them a gibbering system. He covers up the tree and tells it that he will join 2 others, but he needs it to protect the house and everyone and everything within it. Back at the Zhao family mansion, Zhao tells him that he has been receiving treatment from him and he wonders if he has recovered fully. Ning decides to take a look at his arm and notices that his condition has improved and gives him the go-ahead to take wine, but warns him not to take too much. Zhao orders Mr. Li to fetch him his herbal brew and does a cheer to Master Ning. Zhao drinks up and decides to take another. His daughter immediately warns him as 1 glass is enough for him as he is still recovering. Zhao then tells his daughter Mingmen to bring Ning to the ceremony as he is a very important stakeholder in the West City, so he will be expected to put up an appearance. At the West City project, Ming is informed by her driver that there is trouble ahead, and she insists she is taken in, as such a thing happens when doing construction projects. She gets in and comes down from her vehicle. Immediately, she is noticed by the press, who decides to have a word with her since she is in charge of the ceremony. Ning notices a large crowd coming towards her and begins to observe how she reacts. Ning sees 2 pests he was not expecting to see, and they begin to wonder what he is doing there and begin to think he is Ming's bodyguard. Ming immediately asks him if he knows them, and Ning asks the pests if they have come to scatter and cause trouble at their commencement ceremony, and she admits for some mistake in the past, but it is wrong for him to cheat them out of the compensation. Her brother insults him and tells Ning that he will get revenge for what he did to his sister by robbing her of what she deserved. Ning immediately asks him who told him something that bad about him after listening to all he has to say. Suddenly, he grabs Ning by his collar, but Ning holds his hands and throws him away. Ning then asks who wants to challenge him as he is ready to take on all of them. He immediately tells Tang Lanlan to go and discuss the terms of payment with all of them again. Tang goes and delivers his message to all of them and tells them that their fair treatment has always been their priority. Ning also promises the people that they will find their payment to their satisfaction, and also warns them not to threaten them again. Ning then tells Lan Lan that he can only count on her to get it done, as it is all up to her. Ming immediately cuts them and offers to give him a lift since he has a friend to meet. Lan Lan also promises to do her best for him as he plans to leave, and he hugs her. Ning begins to kiss Lan Lan, and Ming immediately stops them and tells them that they should get a room instead of kissing in front of all the workers. Ming immediately drags Ning back into the car and carries him away. Lan Lan begins to feel bad on seeing how Ning was taken away from her. Ning tells her that she should not be like that to him because she has not found her to right, and tells her what she did was foul play. She tells him that she was only protecting his image, and he should not get the idea all wrong, and they begin to leave. Ning begins to think that the incident with Liu has really sealed up the concept of romance for her and plans to exclude her whenever he spends time with Lan Lan. Ming immediately asks him what he sees in her and tells him that her figure is better than hers, and there are other more pretty girls out there than her. Ning immediately begins to look at her body and admits that she is indeed beautiful despite her dark complexion, and can stir up a man's fantasies. Ning immediately tells her that if there is anyone more beautiful than his girlfriend, he will know when he sees it. Ming tells him that when he sees the girl he will be cured, maybe he will reconsider. On getting to their destination, Ning sees Xingyu, and he receives the reports on everything they have been doing regarding the jade cutting and polishing. Ning decides to have a look and goes into the building to see how they are doing. Ming tells him that it is risky for a novice like him to dabble around in the industry and he should not go in. Ning then tells her to relax as he will not be going that far and tells her to work together with him, and he can provide her with jade stones. Ming becomes surprised and wonders how he managed to secure a supply since the government has restricted the exportation of jadestone. He immediately looks at the tree and begins to give him a report of everyone that came to the house, but it did not kill them as it has been free from the darker side. He immediately tells the tree that the next time someone comes creeping around the building, it should strike the person down. He then goes back and sees Tang Zixuan. At the Vista Dam, Ning tries to use his lighter to light a fire, but Ming holds his hand telling him he is not getting it. She tries to teach him how he will go about the fire, and he decides to ask her a question. He tells her that he needs a legal team specialized in inheritance disputes as he wishes to take his uncle to court. Ming promises that her family stands with him and Tang Zixuan will not get away with it. He also tells her that he would want his mother and his sister to be protected by her, as he will be sleeping in the new building, and will let her have her pick of the jade ore when he is done. She tells him not to think about selling to anyone else as she plans to buy all he has. Ning then promises her to see a lot of raw materials from now on as there will not be any lack. Later that day, Ning goes back to the building and sees Xingyu playing a game under the tree and introduces Ning to his cousin that just arrived. His cousin immediately promises to do a clean job without wastage, and Ning tells him that he can place his trust on Xingyu's family, and he expects he can appraise the value of the materials. His cousin promises to deliver a good job to him as the quality will become evident. Ning immediately likes him and chats with Xiaobia. She tells him that his goods will arrive soon. He immediately leaves and goes upstairs, promising them that he will be right back. He immediately receives the goods from her and goes to tell Xingyu to resume work immediately, and they should begin to remove the raw ore. Xing and his cousin begin to wonder when the ore arrived, and they go up and become very surprised on seeing a large amount of ore. They begin to wonder how he managed to get a large amount of ore, and Ning decides to have his own people set the price of each and plans to stop wholesale. Xing's cousin tells Ning that the building is a safe place to store the jade stones, and if word gets out, anyone can do anything. Ning smiles and tells him that they will make it in, and they will never take it out because of the dryad tree and his instruction for it to keep over the jade stains. He begins to think about the issue with his uncle, and immediately calls Lan Lan and asks her if Tang Guang has been discharged from the hospital. Lan tells him that she has not heard anything, and she is not sure if he is still in the hospital, but she will get someone to check right away. Later, he receives a message from her telling him that Tang Guang has gone on a business trip. Ning immediately tells Ning to follow him to the hospital, and he goes to hand a blank check to who wishes to assist him on his mission. Later that day, Ning tells Xingyu that he will be traveling as he has an urgent matter to attend to and transfers some money to him for his sister's printing press in his own use. Xingyu appreciates him for his kindness, and Ning begins to leave. Ning begins to have a meal with Ming, and she tells him that after the meal, they will fly to Tenchang. Suddenly, Ning hears a voice outside asking him to heal his daughter. He goes out and sees that it is the man he bought the building from and tells him that they have ended their deal and wonders what he wants. The man tells him that he is aware that he can summon spirits to heal his daughter, and if he refuses, he will kill himself and drop it in front of his building the next morning. The man tries to hang himself, and Ning immediately jumps down from the building and goes to stop him, begs him to think it through and how he will be able to save those girls if he is dead. The man then decides to kill them to prevent them from suffering, and Ning stops him, and Ming comes down and begs Ning to show mercy on the man's family. Dryad immediately tells him that it only knows how to harm and not heal. Ning immediately begs the man to give him 10 days to be able to settle his issue, and he goes to his factory. Ning immediately tells one of his workers to begin work during the day, and not at night, as he will be fired if he is caught. The worker begs him to be able to finish the piece, and as they are so beautiful, and he does not need to be paid overtime. Ning begins to wonder if he will be okayed, as he has not rested, and immediately sends him to bed. Ning then tries to buy time by giving him one of the jade stones and tells him that it will ward off evil spirits, and tells him not to pay since he calls him master. Ming immediately takes him to another place where his healing is needed, and he sees a girl standing and begins to admire her. Ming tells him to wipe that look off his face as they have come for serious business. Ming introduces him to her uncle and Lin invites him to come in for a meal. They go in and Lin asks Ning if he has found a way to treat his daughter's affliction, and he tells him that his daughter is being possessed and the only way is to exorcise the demon that is tormenting her. Lin begs him to help him after explaining everything to her, and Ning promises to help her, and nothing will happen to her. Lin begins to take Ning to go see the tree, and Ning begins to notice how hot the sun is and wonders if the ghost is beneath the tree. Ning asks Lin about the tree where Wu Tin hanged himself, and Lin tells him that he has already chopped down the tree, and the new tree was just planted recently, and asks him if there is something odd about the new tree, and Ning tells him that his attention was caught by its height. Lin explains to him that he felt all the trees when he saw that his daughter had been trying to hang herself from a tree in the yard. Ning sees that he has tried a lot of options, and notices that none of them has helped, and he has been praying for a miracle from Ning. Ning tells him that the spirit is vile, and it will cost him at least 30 years to vanish it, and thinks that if he has any red jade stone he should bring it out. Lin tells him that he shall be well compensated, and Ning tells him that hope he understands that he cannot do that kind of thing for free. Ning immediately tells him that he will need 10,000 carats of red jade stone of at least crystal clear quality. Lin notices how difficult it is to get the jade stones and asks him if he will prefer payment in cash. Ning insists on the jade stones, and Lin promises to get him the jade stones no matter what it costs to save his daughter. Lin appreciates him and begins to take his leave to gather his compensation that he has requested. Ning also tells him that he would like to set up his equipment, and immediately calls Xiaobei. Ning asks her that if he uses the seal she has given him from Hades, what are his chances of victory, and she tells him that the seal is a priceless treasure, and using it on a hanged man is a total waste. Ning tells her that he figured, but he has no other means to fight with the ghost. She immediately tells him that carrying the seal will make the ghost flee from him, therefore making it difficult for him to banish them. Ning immediately remembers the tree outside and sees that Wu Tian's ghost was under the tree and must have fled immediately when it saw him. He immediately asks her if there is a way to trick the ghost to appear before him, and she tells him that he is trying to defile the natural order as they all have different realms. Xiaobai immediately tells him that there is no way so as to force him to make a deal with her. Ning immediately makes a deal of 10 million, and she agrees to help him. She immediately tells him how to go about it, and Ning asks her it equals if there would be any trouble, and she tells him that there won't be any trouble, instead he will be rewarded for saving the natural order. Ning sees how she has simply manipulated him to give her 10 million, and also how she made him promise to scan clothes to her answers how manipulative she is. During dinner, Ning begins to see why Ming was comparing her to Lan Lan and sees how she carries herself with so much beauty and inner grace. She immediately pours him tea and asks him if he would like to be called by his name instead of being called master. Ning insists on them calling him whatever they like, and she immediately gives a toast to him and welcomes him to Tenchong. Suddenly some thugs come into the building with weapons, and Ming and Su Chu become suddenly afraid. Ning immediately tells them to get behind him, and he begins to beat up the soldiers and throw them to the wall. Ning looks up and sees a large crowd of thugs coming into the building and tells Ming to call the cops and stay hidden until they arrive. Ning begins to wonder if there has been some mistake, and they begin to attack him, but he uses the table in front of him to bring them down, and the thugs begin to wonder how someone so skinny like him would pack a punch. Ning decides to stop them from reaching the girls, and they all decide to attack him at once to see if he will be able to protect the girls, and he tells them to come and meet their end. Ning beats them all up, and suddenly, he is hit with a bat at his back. He immediately hears the girls calling for help and immediately goes to rescue them. He tells the men to come fight him instead of picking on little girls. The girls immediately come towards him, and he sees that if he falls, the girls would be next, and immediately picks up the phone, making the thugs think he is planning to call the cops and threaten him even more. Ning summons a demon and falls to the ground and tells them to call Mr. Lin. Ning passes out and wakes up in the guest room in the side of the building, and Ming rushes to him and hugs him, telling him that he had her worried. Ning tells her to cut it out as he is not dead yet and wonders what she is doing. She tells him that he has been in a coma for 3 days straight, and she is afraid he will never wake up again. Ning denies it as he feels very strong and wonders what happened. She begins to mock him and asks him about how he told those guys that they were his, and he tells her that he should have gotten them to safety and wonders how he passed out if she has any clue on it. She immediately tells him that he lost a lot of blood and that might be the reason. Ning tells her that he only caught a little slight glimpse of her face, that all he saw was darkness, and began to laugh. Ming becomes angry and tells him that she should have let them stab him, and she hits his broken legs and leaves. Ning then tells her that they should be friends so as to prevent her from getting hurt. Mr. Lin comes with a group of doctors, and the doctors begin to evaluate his health, and they tell him that it might take a week before he can get up and walk again. Ning immediately asks Mr. Lin if he picked up his phone, and Xuanchu tells him that she kept it in her room and he should focus on his recovery. Ning immediately begs her to give it back to him, as he is basically married to it and cannot do without it. Ning also asks Mr. Lin why he brought him to his daughter's room, and Lin tells him that he trusts him. Ning tells him that he values his trust, but his daughter is a beauty beyond compare, and he cannot dare to trust himself. Lin explains to him that he noticed that she was fine when she was around him, and nothing happened to her on the day he went into coma, and that is why he has decided to keep him in her room. Xuanchu immediately comes back with his phone, and Ning asks him if he has prepared what he has requested, and Lin tells him that it is all ready. Lin immediately tells his daughter to go get him some food from the kitchen, and uses the opportunity to discuss the affair in her absence with Ning Hao. He also tells him to get the right amount of blood and sand mixture, so that it can be done perfectly well. Lin also asks him if he is not curious about who sent those men to him, and he tells him maybe they confused him for someone else, and tells him that he will be fine. He immediately asks if it was Tang Zixinong who sent them, and Lin tells him that he will have to find out himself, and tells him that it was his cousin that paid the thugs to attack him. Ning thanks him for his trouble, and tells him not to bother himself about the issue any longer. Xuanchu begins to read a book in her room, and Ning sees that his karma points are at 143, and he notices that the use of Phantom Veil has cost him 25 karma, and he notices he is losing a lot of karma points. He then faces Xuanchu and asks her to chat with him for a bit. She agrees and tells him that her dad has instructed that she gets to know him better, and Ning asks her if she knew the person that hanged himself in her yard. She tells him that Wu Tian had a crush on her, and Ning asks her if she has ever liked him for once. She tells him that love cannot be forced, and reveals that Mingmin has washed off the blood from all his clothes by hand, and asks if it will make him fall in love with her. Ning begins to think about what Xuanchu has said and tells her not to change the subject, and asks her how things were between the two of them. She tells him that he creeped her out and did a tattoo of her figure on his back, and she could not marry him because he proposed and she never expected him to kill himself. Ning immediately begins to think of how he will go about it and begins to discuss and negotiate with Xiaobai, and once again she requests another 10 million from him per head. Ning continues the negotiation and later falls asleep later. When he wakes up, he tells them that they will begin to sleep in different rooms, and Ming asks him if they are not sleeping together anymore, and Xuanchu asks her to phrase it properly. He tells him that he wants to deal with the Taiyan guy once and for all if he trespasses. Xuanchu becomes afraid and asks Mingmin to stay with her, and Ning tells her to believe him that after the night all will be over. Later that night, Ning tells them to watch, and if they notice anything, they should seal off the exit immediately. Mingmin tells them that if they feel cold wind, then it's a sign of his presence, and Mingmin wonders if he is going to show up as it is already sunrise already. Ning immediately feels the cold wind and tells them to seal the corridor, and he begins to advance toward the building. Nate looks at the lamp and thinks that Tan is not coming, and suddenly sees Xuanchu through the window and wonders what she is doing there. Ning looks at her and sees that she has been possessed. Ning tells her that she should get back from the balcony. He sees that Tian craves for her instead of his own life himself, and Xuanchu immediately jumps from the balcony, and Ning immediately catches her and sees that she is possessed and slaps her to snap out of it. Ning holds her and tries to use the seal on her, but Xuanchu bites his lip, and it hurts Ning Hao. He notices that she is not fleeing outside the barrier, meaning that Tan's ghost really cannot pass through the spirit barrier. He sees that Tan is caught in his trap with nowhere to run, and he begins to advance towards her. Ming and the others continue to watch, and Ming tells him not to allow it to hurt Xuanchu. Ming advises it to try jumping and reveals the seal on his chest, and tells the ghost not to pick a fight with him as he is going to send him to where he belongs. Ming thinks of finishing it off by expanding the banishment seal and takes off his clothes. Ming immediately begins to shout and warn him not to take advantage of her situation, and Ming warns her to get back, and if she enters the barrier, Tian will be able to escape. Ming enters the barrier and breaks the barrier, making Tian to be able to escape from them. Ning immediately orders for her to be caught, and they were not able to get her to make Ning go after her himself. Ning pursues her into the forest and strikes his foot on a stone, and Ming tells him that she sees Xuanchu on a rooftop. Ning begins to look at her and sees that he will not be able to reach her and save her again, as she is far away from his reach, and wonders if it will be her last night among the living. Ning immediately begins to negotiate with Tian so as to save her life, and tells him that Xuanchu harbors some feelings for him and begs him to grant him a chance and he can show him. Ning brings out a letter and tells him that it fell out of Xuanchu's pocket, and tells him that if there is way to bring him back to life, she will surely marry him. Chen insists he brings it closer so he can see, and Ning sees that his plan is working and moves closely to show him the letter. He stretches and hands him the letter, telling him that it reveals her true desires and heart secrets. Chen tells him that he is already dead and the afterlife is the only place they can be together, and Ning tells him that he has the power to bring back the dead. Ming begins to tell him about her granny making Ning to insult her. Chen asks how he plans on doing that, seeing that his body might have already been rotten. Ning also tells him if he saw the ritual he placed as he entered, and tells him that she paid a fortune to bring him back. Chen immediately leaves her and asks him why she called him a psycho if she really wanted him back. Ning immediately convinces him and asks them both to get down from there, as his services are half-priced for true love. Ning also warns him to be good to her, in a bid to deceive him even more. Chen begins to bring her down, and Min asks Ning what will happen if he escapes. He immediately tells Ning to get out of his way, as something feels off by coming close to him, as he will want to get to the door so that he will get close to the land of the living. Ning tells him that he is no threat to him, and tells him to come closer, as he will not harm him. Ning immediately tells him to be strong and begins to run towards him. Ning holds Tian in Xuechu's body and places the seal on her head, and immediately banishes Tian from her body and immediately falls on her body. Ming comes and orders him to stand up from her body simply because she is jealous, and tells him to take her inside, seeing it is raining, and they should quickly carry her inside. Ning begins to carry her, and he asks Ming why she is breathing down his neck and wonders if she thinks he might do something to her. She tells him not to mind and asks if Tian's ghost has been dealt with. She places her hands on her nose to see if she is breathing, and Ning tells her to relax as Tian's ghost has been wiped from existence. Ming takes her inside and changes her clothes, and Liu comes in and asks Ning if he has cured his daughter of her illness. Ning tells him that the problem has been permanently resolved and asks him if he has what he asked for. Lin promises to pay them all in 3 days and tells him to stay with them for a few days, and he will have his people meet all his demands and go to see his daughter. Ning begins to think about what Lin said about paying the debt and finds something off about it. Suddenly, his phone rings and Xiaobai tells him that another shipment is ready and asks him if now is a good time to deliver it. He tells her that he cannot receive it where he is, and she promises to hold on to it for him. He begins to prepare for his next payment of red jade stone and begins to tend to the ladies online. Ning goes to meet them and tell them to follow him to check out the jade exchange. Ning notices how beautiful they are dressed and asks them if they are going to their own wedding. Xuechu tells them not to dwell on it and go enjoy themselves. They arrive at the jade trade and they all go around to look for items they can buy, and Xuechu tells him to stop searching as her dad has already bought all the red jade stones in Tengshan. Ning immediately asks her that there will be nothing left for him to buy. Ming gives him an idea, and Ning asks her if he should strike her as a wealthy man. They go into another shop, and Jing asks how much the red toad is, and the merchant tells him that it is not for sale as it is their signature piece. They begin to negotiate the price with the merchant and try to convince him to sell it. The merchant starts with a price of 10 million, and Ning tries to reduce it to 3 million. The merchant refuses and tells them to pick another, and Ning decides to leave the store. Ming then decides to buy it for 5 million, and the merchant agrees to her offer. Ming then tells him that it's a token of their gratitude for saving their life, and she decides to pay with her card. Ning asks her where her business sense is, and she tells him that there are a lot of things he does not understand from her end. Ning smiles and tells himself that he will never understand Ming. Xuechu also wonders what she will give him for saving her life twice, and Ming tells her to give him her body since she will be wedded to him anyways. Ning becomes surprised and asks what is going on. She tells him that her father has promised that anyone that can cure her will marry her, and she will be getting married to him. Ning tells her that he did not ask for her hand in marriage, and all he requested were jade stones. Ning gets angry at Ming since she knew all along, but she tells him that she is a good girl from a good home and wishes him happiness together with her, and runs off. Xuechu immediately asks if he is rejecting her and what he finds inadequate about her. Ning tells her that marriage is not something to dive into it, and tells her that she has not even met his mother before, and he leaves the shop. Ning leaves the shop and plans to take his things and go back to his home, and Ming begins to console Xuechu. If you like this recap, do let me know in the comments, and obviously leave your likes too. Do not forget to share with your friends and subscribe. Above all, activate your notification bell so you don't miss the next recap when it drops. Until next time, do take care and stay safe.